Hello and welcome to makers.dev episode lucky number 15. Chris, hello. How are you?
Hello. I'm doing pretty well. How are you doing? Much better than last week.
Much better than that's good. Survived the stomach bug.
Yeah.
I had a few days this last week of sleep being sort of weird. I'm dating a woman now and she has cats and I'm allergic to cats. And sleeping over at her place was a challenge. And I figured out if I just got a really expensive HEPA air filter and turned it on full blast, I'm not allergic to her cats anymore. So, but then still, like, I have historically suffered from sleep onset insomnia. That was a whole project last year of trying to figure sleep out. But I feel like I've mostly corrected for it, but things like sleeping in a different environment still throw me off. There's all these little things I've noticed of like temperature and the timing, and my brain just loves habits and patterns. And if anything in that flow of like, okay, I go to this bathroom and here's my toothbrush and I floss like this, and then right after that I go and lay in this bed and it feels like this and the temperature is about this. So that getting shaken a little bit just threw me off on sleep, and I noticed it, and I'm able to track it, and like I have numbers on it, and I was able to like take a nap and correct for it. And then last night slept at my place and was able to like, oh, I've recovered from that, and I feel that my brain feels more awake and I'm able to better do things. That's my health update for this last week.
I thought about that this week too, because last week we talked about keeping the monkey happy, and part of that is, just good sleep and good food. And if like when I eat junk and sleep poorly, I don't get anything done the next day. And I know that, and still don't eat well and don't sleep well, so that's an ongoing thing with me as well. But I mean, the better you can make your sleep and eating habits, the better it is.
Agreed. It's amazing to me how much the fundamentals of things impact these higher level orders. It's so attractive to get caught up in like, ooh, this new productivity hack. It's called Eat That Frog, and you just have to have this daily planner and answer these 3 questions every day. And that doesn't have nearly as much of an impact as like, are you sleeping, and are you eating food, and are you exercising?
Yep.
And like, if you can get those 3 things down, that is more impactful than any productivity thing you could possibly do. And until you get those 3 things, it doesn't make sense to spend any time at anything higher level. It's a lesson I keep having to relearn, and I hope to one day internalize that I am a good parent for myself and I'm taking care of those fundamentals.
Yeah, me too. I'm terrible at it, but so I need to get better.
Small note on the podcast. The sound still sounds crunched to me, and we both have the best microphone, and so it's not the microphone, it's nothing in hardware, and individually the soundtracks sound good. But there's something in my automated video editor script that's, when I mix the 2 signals together, it sounds more crunched. And that's a goal of mine for this next week. I would love to decrease the audio listening fatigue for our beloved listeners of this podcast and have nice high quality sound. And so playing with the bitrate, I think, is the next experiment in that. I think also if I looked at like the audio graph, I'm not sure what that's called, but the waveform, and I want to be able to see visually what's actually happening. That I'm calling this more crunch sound.
When I was listening back to it last week, it sounded a little like clipping, but you're right. I would call it's different than clipping, I think. Crunching is a good word because it's sort of clipping, but and I only notice it sometimes. So I don't know if it's like most of the time our volume is fine and then it only clips a little on some of the. I'm not sure. I think the audio is fine. But if you want to improve it, go for it.
I agree that it's fine. And harkening back to an episode, I think 2 or 3 ago, talking about how like perfect is the enemy of good. Like, it's good enough, just like ship it, fix it in the next one. Yes, the audio quality is not nearly bad enough that like I would not publish these episodes. And it's a point of continual improvement. I would like each episode's quality to be better than the last one. It's like the difference in audio quality between a really high quality NPR podcast and a telephone call. That's like, you can still hear what they're saying, but it's crunched. The space is smaller. I don't know what it is. Or the hertz are less, or I don't understand audio as well as I do now video. I want to dive into that and figure it out.
Yeah.
I would love to talk with you about one of my favorite tweet threads that I've seen on Twitter in years. Uh, Talk to me about Acorn Chat and this Building Assassin Week. I have loved these videos. What has your experience been in doing that? That's the thing you said you wanted to work on last week.
Yeah.
You did it. I love it. It's great. How was that?
Sure. So last week we talked about all the things that I needed to do, and we even talked after the podcast, and you helped me like work through my priorities and like what I was going to do, and then I mostly ignored you and just launched this thing anyway. So I had this idea a while ago that I wanted to build a SaaS that's most like that I already know there's competitors out there, so I know people want it, and I can get it into a marketplace. So in this case, it's the Slack app marketplace, so that I at least get some inbound traffic. So that's basically my goals. It has to exist, and it has to be in the Slack app marketplace. And I've wanted before like these live chat widgets on some of my sites because I think like talking to customers is really important, right? And that is one way that you can help people over roadblocks, just by having Slack open all day. They chat to you from the website, it goes to Slack, you chat back, and building it yourself is actually pretty tricky. So there's these apps that exist that do it. There's about 24 of them. There's probably more, but that's what I found in the app marketplace. And so I had the idea to build one of those, and in order to force myself to do it and to do it kind of in public, I was going to do it in a week and then tweet about all of my steps along the way. And since I have been doing these short 2-minute videos, because Twitter allows 2-minute and 20-second videos, I have a video for every step as well. And so it's like setting up the repo, getting Rails started, getting user authentication. And now it's into, building out the first bits, and then it's going to be the Slack app like marketplace. And then I'm also including things in there like, so the last one I just did was launch before you're ready. So like I have the chat app widget done on the front end. There is a lot that I don't like about it. I want to change a lot about it, but it works for what it's supposed to do. And so, that's it. I'm shipping that. So I'm halfway through this now. I think I will get done in a week, like only just. I'm super interested to see where it goes, Yeah.
Same. Every time one pops up, I'm so excited. Like I look at it right away, like, oh my gosh. So several things from my end of being someone who's just watching this unfold. I love the 2-minute, 20-second limitation on creativity. It is a perfect boundary for the type of thing that you can say. And so everything is very chunked and self-contained, and in a similar way to how it's so much more difficult to write a poem than it is to write a haiku about refrigerators. Having this arbitrary limitation of, okay, it has to be a video and it has to be less than 2 minutes and 20 seconds long. It feels like the chunking happens much more naturally of like, okay, here's the next thing I'm doing. I'm setting up SSL certificates, or I'm adding an email domain. Well, any of those tasks effectively extend to everything else that you're doing, and it's not necessarily clear where the start of that thing is and where the end of the thing is. But by having this thing of like, okay, it's 2 minutes and 20 seconds, this is the length of the video. Oh, it just makes it so tight and crunchy, and like you have a little title of this is the thing I'm doing in this video, and then you do it, and I've gotten value in under 2 minutes and 20 seconds, and I love it. It's such a cool format for learning and seeing the work that you're doing. Another thing I've really... Go ahead.
I was going to say, it makes it much easier to produce too, because like previously I'd be like if I switch camera angles, for example, I want transitions, or if I switch screens, I'm worried about all that. Well, when I got 2 minutes, I just cut from one to the other, no cruft, and so it's been easier to produce as well.
I love it. Small side question. I noticed your video is in a circle in the lower right side of the screen, and I shared Camhead with you. Is that what you're using?
It is not.
Okay.
I need it in the other side of the screen. I need it smaller, and I have another requirement for you. I need it flipped 180 degrees, because when I'm looking at my screen, if I put it in the lower right side of my screen, the video, it looks like I'm looking away from my code, which looks wrong, and so I translated 180 degrees so that it looks like I'm looking at the other side of my screen.
I have added that to my feature list. That's not something I would have thought of. That makes perfect sense though.
So if you do those things, I'll use Camhead. But yeah,
that's fair. I'm probably not going to do those things, but
okay, maybe I'll do it.
Your feature request has been noticed.
You shared the code with me, so maybe I can figure it out.
So yeah, do it. Do your own pull request. Second thing that I loved about it was by making it a video series, you're doing something that's very difficult to do in writing, but I think something that comes very naturally in video, which is showing instead of telling. And the benefit of that, I think I articulated while watching one of your videos, because you were explaining how to do something. And in the process of doing that, I don't remember what specifically this was. I wish I'd written it down, but your goal was something like, okay, I'm going to connect the email domains and do the DK I'm signing or something. And in watching you do that, there was a step of it that you just sort of glossed over as unimportant, of like, oh, this is annoying. You have to do this. And it had something to do with email. It might come to me. I don't remember. But that was a problem that I had that, like, I didn't know how to do. And by seeing you like physically go through it, that answered a question that I had that I don't think you knew I would have had. And if this was something that you were writing down of a tutorial or something, that's a detail that I think would have been glossed over, because in your head, this is trivially easy for you. You're just writing down what it is. But as a video, you're forcing yourself to walk through every single step of it and capture the steps that to you are unconscious. And so I really like that. That's a fun benefit of the medium of these sort of video tutorials.
Yeah. There's been a few spots I may have included on purpose. Was it the Gmail one, like adding something to G Suite? And then, was it that one, or was it?
No.
That was a different one. Okay, anyway, there's been a few spots. So there's like, first of all, I realized there's about 50 steps to setting up a SaaS. and I've internalized them all, right? But yeah, anyway, so there's a lot of steps. And at every step, there's like some little something or other.
Yeah.
And so the one I'm thinking about is when you set up G Suite, if you try to add your email to an existing paid plan as an alias, and you go do the thing in the DNS, and then add your domain in Google Domains, and then try to add it, it will ask you for a username and password. And you're like, what? I don't get it. Why? And all you have to do is wait 2 hours for Google servers to like process the thing and then do it. The first time I did that, I tried for 2 hours to do it, and then it just worked, and I didn't know what happened. The second time, I kind of recognized it. By the seventh time or so, I was like, oh, okay, I just need to wait 2 hours. So yeah, by sharing tips like that in these videos, like that's happened probably 5 or 6 times as I've been giving these videos. I'm like, oh sure. Yeah, this took me like 2 days to learn. Here you go.
Yeah. I love it. What a beautiful illustration of what expertise is. Like, it's a series of tasks that you have struggled for 2 days to learn each individual thing that can be expressed in 10 seconds. I love that. I love watching experts work. In a similar vein, I'm fascinated by these like master craftsman videos on YouTube of someone who's just worked like with iron for the last 50 years, and they just know all the tricks, and they know all the ways that something can go wrong. And so you see them doing these things that don't really make sense, of like, why'd they splash this thing with water at this point? But it's because they've been through this thing where they got caught in this rabbit hole for 2 days trying to figure out why this thing wasn't working, and they figured out the solution to it was, you splash water on it in this step, and then that never happens again, and you don't have to think about it. It's so fun watching you work doing this. It's great. I don't necessarily agree with all of your architecture decisions. I've personally moved away from Rails. We talked about how I hate Heroku.
Yep.
One of those questions that I have is, why have subdomains for the app and separate marketing www sites? This is not something that I have a strong opinion on, but it's something I've seen a lot of people do, and more established companies. Like when you're using Firebase, you don't go to firebase.com, you go to console.firebase.com. And I don't understand the pros and cons of that. I understand some of the cons of, like, now I have to have separate domains. And another con for me, I think, is that there's weird things I want to do if someone is logged in and they go to the main site. I want them to just go immediately to the dashboard and not see the marketing site. And that's something I've seen apps struggle with that have separate sites. What's your take on that? Why did you split the marketing and the app site?
Yeah, so this is something I see a lot of companies get wrong, and some get right. But yeah, okay. So I first read about this. So I had seen it before, and then Tyler Tringus posted on Twitter once. I link in my tweet. I linked to his tweet too. And he said, make sure you do this at the beginning of a SaaS. And I was the same way. I was like, why? Why? Because at the beginning of a SaaS, like, you have your app, and it serves your homepage, it serves your app, it serves your blog, it serves your whatever. But once you're, say, 12 people, then you have a marketing team, or 100 people. You have a marketing team who wants to update the wording on the site. You have content writers who want to update the blog. You have your backend developers who want to do the app. And if you have to redeploy your app for every single one of those things, then it's super disruptive. You have to involve developers every time. And so the point is to fix it at the beginning. And so if you have a marketing team later, they can use WordPress or Ghost or like whatever they want for the marketing side, and it doesn't affect your app at all. And then in my case, especially, I wanted an embed dot subdomain because the thing that I'm doing is putting a little embedded widget on every customer's page. So they may have, whatever, 1 million page views, to completely separate from like me. So that needs to be super highly available, and I don't want it to hit my app in the future. Like right now, it's just part of the app, but in the future, I can put it on a CDN, and then I don't have to worry about how many page views my customer's getting. So it's completely separate from my app. The other thing is, so say for example, you get on Hacker News and your site goes down. If your marketing site and your backend are separate, then at least your backend is still up for your existing customers, even if your marketing site goes down. So that's another thing. I agree there's cons though. So the cons are, it's a little weird. It's like you got to switch domains. You have to pay attention to more domains. And then especially what you're talking about, like the automatically logging in, that's something a lot of companies don't do. The way you fix it is by having a shared cookie, but you have to design for that at the beginning too. And so, yeah, so I share my cookie across my app and regular subdomains, which by the way, took me 4.5 hours to figure out how to do over the weekend. So that's not trivial. But now that I know how to do it, okay, I know how to do it.
You can convey it now in 10 seconds.
Yeah, exactly, right.
Yeah.
So you do have to do a little bit of that, but that's why you want to do that. Now, I say all that to say, for you and me, who are mostly going to be solo developers, probably doesn't matter at all because we have small apps. We're never going to have a team of 100, right? And so it probably does not matter. But if you're building something and you're thinking about growing it, then those are all the reasons you may want to do that.
That's solid. That's a good exploration of the landscape. I think I agree that it doesn't make sense for me to do that. And I don't even think it makes sense for me to preemptively do that thinking about one day having a separate marketing team, because it doesn't feel like it would be too difficult to move domains. Like, I guess if people had deep links within the app side of it that were floating around,
which is what I'm going to have. I give every person an embed link. So if that link is not embed dot from the beginning, then they're going to have old links and I can't update them. So that's why from the beginning I need that embed dot link to be right.
I see the argument for the embed link. I solved this problem for Fileinbox because it's the same sort of architecture of that someone has to embed a JavaScript widget, and it's embedded on some sites that are getting ridiculous numbers of page views. And I don't remember how I solved it. It's going through a CDN, but I didn't use, I think it's Cloudflare, and I think I set up like in Nginx that any asset got forwarded through Cloudflare.
So
I don't
that's
remember how I set that up.
Yeah, that's the other way you can do it. So Cloudflare, you can cache like certain, just certain routes or whatever. So yeah, that would absolutely work too. And probably what I will end up doing, like before I design some, CDN backend or whatever, I'll probably just use Cloudflare. Yeah.
That makes sense. But embed dot gives you much more flexibility of if you wanted to take that entire embed dot domain and push that to Cloudflare, that would make that much more simple in the future.
Exactly.
Okay.
And from right now, it's almost no work. Like I set it up the once and I add embed dot in front of all my links, and everything else is the same. Like I only deploy once. I don't have to deploy to each subdomain. Like it's all just a DNS record. So yeah, it was just worth it.
That makes sense. I noticed the embed JavaScript that you had I thought it was .ejs. Is that right? Are you doing something dynamic in that JavaScript?
Yep, I am. This is something else that'll probably change, but so it's dynamic per customer because you have to open the iframe like with their customer code in it and everything.
Right.
And also, I'm going to let them customize like everything about it, like so you can update it for your colors, so you can like your website colors, so you can put your own messages on it or whatever. So it needs to be dynamic. And that's fine for now that it's going through Rails. In the future, if this thing turns into something where it's getting a lot, I can put it behind Cloudflare. That's one thing, but I could also cache them by writing files to a CDN somewhere, like writing files to S3 or something. So in the future, it may be more smart than it is. But yeah, right now it's just EGS.
That's a clever architecture. Okay, so there are things that need to be customized per embed, like the color.
Yep.
And you could be caching those at the level of the JavaScript file. I think I'm surprised by that because now the JavaScript is harder to cache, and now you're introducing this whole new complexity of like cache invalidation, of writing files to S3 if you're trying to simplify that. And I think the way I've seen embeds work is that like the embed code is just a static JavaScript file. It's always linking to the exact same thing. And whatever customization needs to happen for that is happening in JavaScript, of like it's an API call, or it's embedded like as a query parameter for the JavaScript, but it's not actually changing anything server side. It's just like the JavaScript is looking at whatever that data is.
So you could do that, but then you have the same problem, because then you get the static JavaScript file, but then you have a unique API call. That has the personalization in it.
Yeah. So, okay. And for something like this, like how often are they going to change the colors of their embed?
Right. And so whenever they do, you just force the cache invalidation. And
yeah. And it doesn't matter that the writes are more expensive. Okay. I like that. Interesting. I'm re-architecting a Fileinbox, so I might steal that. I need to chew on that more though. There was one more thing you said in the process of doing this. Your launch before you're ready video. I love that so much. That's such a powerful idea. This idea of like perfect is the enemy of good. And as soon as you get a good enough front end, like go forward and do it. And I think you're able to do that because you're laser focused on like, this is the point where people start getting value. People get value when they can embed this line of JavaScript in their site, and that lets customers chat with them, and that chat goes into Slack. And any other details that are not that path would be nice to have, like the text overflowing. That would be a nice to have thing if the design was like a little bit cleaner. But does that prevent you from getting to that goal? No, then it's not important. I'm reminded of this aphorism I heard recently, I think on Twitter, of successful people are very detail oriented, and unsuccessful people are very detail oriented. And successful people are focused on the details that matter. And of course, because at any point in this, you could get sucked down this rabbit hole of like, the text is slightly overflowing. Let me dive into that and make that perfect. There are so many in the course of doing this. I imagine like thousands, if not millions, of different little micro decisions like that, of details that you had to consciously choose to ignore in order to go forward and get to this path, this goal, as quickly as possible. I love seeing you sprint to this goal just like single-mindedly. Like the way to get to where you're going, I think, depends on the details that you choose to ignore more than the details that you choose to matter. And it's fun seeing an example of that, of you consciously making the decision of like, everything in this class of it could look better doesn't matter because the value of the place I'm trying to get to is going to get reached.
Yeah. So like in the text overflow example, I spent 10 minutes trying to fix that. I could not. So I was just like, forget it. I'm moving on.
Yes.
If I was not doing this SaaS in a week, like thread, I probably would have spent another 2 hours trying to fix that. Right.
Yeah.
And so I like forcing myself into this constraint because it lets me do that thing. It also, like, I envision launching with being able to change like the color and everything of the chat widget. Yeah. It turns out that making this is harder than I thought it was going to be, especially while documenting the whole thing. So I have to drop something. So that's something that I just dropped. And
yes, great.
And that's probably a good choice, right? Getting it out into, people's hands is better than getting it all perfect at the beginning. So
yes,
that's what I'm forcing myself to do. I have 48 more hours or so, and I think I will get done. Yeah.
What do we have left? A Slack integration?
Slack integration is a big one.
Okay.
Slack integration for async took me a day to do the first time.
Okay.
Now that I've done it the first time, I think I could probably do it in 4 hours. That's my guess.
Fantastic.
And then Stripe integration. Stripe integration is basically almost already done. Like all the code is the same. I just have to swap out the prices, which is awesome.
Love it.
Then the marketing site. Marketing site is one where I could spend a week on it just by itself, like to get everything perfect. But I will probably put something together in about an hour and call that good. And yeah, that's the big one. So Slack integration. There's some other things like there's a button to delete a site if you add one, but it doesn't work. Probably should work. There's some other stuff like that. But
cool. I love it. It sounds like you're probably going to be able to do this in the next 48 hours.
I think so.
How exciting. I've loved so much watching you do this. And this is, I feel like I'm talking to a different Chris than I was talking to last week. Of like, you're so directed and moving forward meaningfully on a goal that you are really intrinsically enjoying. Like, this is great. I love that you're doing this, and I love that this is getting done. It's really cool to watch you.
Yeah, one of the reasons I set up this challenge is because I've noticed in the past that when I have a goal like this, especially a public one, I am way more focused. I get much more done, and it feels directional, like you said. And when I'm not, I'm very listless, like you probably heard the last 3 or 4 weeks, especially when I'm not feeling very well. So I'm way happier, and I get more done. Now, will it turn into profit? That is something to be determined. But I am getting a lot done, and I like it a lot better. So, yeah.
And whether or not this in particular will turn into profit, I think is an unimportant question. The things that you've learned in the process of doing this, of like, oh, you're incredibly motivated if you just set a goal for yourself and have some sort of a public way that you're documenting your progress. Okay, well, great. That toolkit now, that map of how you've determined this is a way that you can successfully move forward in the world, you could apply that to anything. You even if this is a complete failure and like commercially, and no one ever uses it, you have still gotten like a increased Twitter following, and you've learned more about what it takes to motivate you forward, and you've learned more about the process of shipping something out quickly. There's no way that you could fail in spending time in this way. Like, if you can launch something like this in a week and you have a year of runway, okay, if you do this 52 more times, like,
right. Which I don't think I could do,
things,
but yeah.
Sure. But one, okay, so say like, you do once every other week or
maybe.
something, and you do 20 of them. One of those 20 things is going to be fantastically successful, and just optimizing for this game of like, how can you be rolling the dice more often? How can you get more of the reps in? I think is a fantastic way to go forward.
Yeah, and that's why I'm already excited, because I've already learned a ton, and so it's already success, whether or not it succeeds or not. So,
Yep.
Yeah.
Love it.
Cool. How about you? What did you get up to this week?
I had an equally great week. This was one of the few weeks where I feel like I set my goals for what I wanted to do at the end of the last podcast, and then I did the things that I said I was going to do.
Awesome.
I didn't get sidetracked. I pushed forward meaningfully the things that I wanted to do, and they got done. And then I went and did a little bit more. So to recap, last week I wanted to be able to smooth out this flow of that a person could actually use this. So from the beginning, switching from YouTube embeds, which were going to be kind of fragile with figuring out how to download YouTube videos, switching from that to video uploads, which is complicated because you have to figure out cloud storage and how to upload from the browser and things like that. I did it. It's done. You can do it. You can drag and drop a video into it, and it uploads. Oh, it's great. And then I needed to switch around the architecture so that a brand has a video instead of a user having a video. I did it, and I knocked that out in like, I think 2 hours. And part of that was weird of doing migrations in this serverless architecture is strange. You have to like query in JavaScript and be doing the stuff in JavaScript. But I figured that out, and I'll be better at doing that next time. But I loved the architecture of adding brand authentication. Was kind of neat because in this serverless Firebase architecture, it's a NoSQL database. So you can have data models that are like an array, and then you can set up security rules based on the contents of each object. So I can do something like say a user has access to this object if that user is authenticated and their user ID is contained in the array of user IDs within the object, and it just feels very clean. And then to implement features like, oh, I would love to see everyone's brands so that I have access to edit those. Okay, well, that's as simple as let me add my own user ID to each one of the brand arrays for the IDs. So that was fun. I thinking in this serverless Firebase way is weird, and I'm a little cautious that if anything ever changed in Firebase, I'm creating a dependency on them that if they started charging 10 times more, I'd be in trouble. But there's some open source alternatives, and specifically for Firebase. So I don't feel terrible about learning this specific architecture and going forward. I feel like I'm just sort of outsourcing my DevOps to Google.
Yeah, Google has a history of killing projects, but at this point, Firebase is big enough and enough companies depend on them that I think you're safe.
I sure hope so. Parse was a competitor to them like 6 years ago, I think, and then they got shut down. So I wasn't happy about them. I think after Facebook bought them.
Yeah, Facebook.
Yeah, and then shut them down. What's up with that, Facebook? Why'd you do that?
I don't know. Facebook has a weird history of acquisitions.
Facebook. Why are you like this? So this is fun. The biggest feature I wanted to do was being able to do the clipping in the cloud. And there's an API called Q&Code that lets you do transcoding of videos and also some really basic video operations of like clipping and merging videos together. And I did it. I got to the point where like, okay, I've changed the architecture so that someone's uploading the video, so I have access to the raw video, and I have a clip title and a clip in point and out point. So now let me send this off to Q&Code and then set up a listener for when Q&Code drops the completed video back into Google Cloud Storage that updates the model. And I was able to do it. And like, oh, it's so fun. Of the way that I've built this, it could scale to 100 million people and it would still work. I would be paying so much more in server costs, but that's
Right.
the only thing that I would need to be thinking about, because Q&Code is their own API and they handle their own scaling. And Firebase has this promise of like, you can scale to as many people as you want and it just works. It's a lot of fun. I'm enjoying it. Did not get to the point where I was able to transcribe the videos and do my little social Gary-fiification, which is why I didn't post any of the clips I made for last week's episode. So I think I'm just going to post those late or something. But yeah, I feel really good about that. And I know like what the next 7 steps are. And then, fun little bonus piece of work. At the end of the day, when I made the actual clipping part, I was really proud of it, and I had like half an hour before the next thing I had scheduled. And so I was like, it'd be cool if I recorded a quick little video about this, because like I'm feeling excited about this now, and I'd like to convey this excitement while I'm still feeling it, and before this is boring. I'm like, oh yes, of course, it can clip.
Right.
So I opened Camhead, which was just like Command Spacebar, Cam, Enter, and then I changed my video resolution, which was I have set up to be ;9, and then I went to Terminal and started screen recording, which was ;SR, Enter. So in under 10 keystrokes, I started recording this video talking about it, and I recorded one, and it took like a minute and a half, and then I rewatched that and was like, I didn't like that. I could do it better. And so I did it better, and then I had that, and then I transcribed it, which was like transcribe, and then the path of the video, and then I had to correct like 2 words, and then I was like, okay, that's cool, and uploaded that to Twitter. And then I had like 5 minutes left to get ready for my next thing. And so the entire process took like 25 minutes to get that video out, just sort of as an afterthought of like, I did this cool piece of work today, and I'm going to post about it. And that tweet got like, it got like 50 engagements and had a whole bunch of people retweeting it. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is cool. How fun is it that it's kind of unique in this sort of work of like, you can make a video about the work that you did, and then people tell you what a good job you did. Like, there's accountants don't do that. And like if I worked in a lumber yard, I'm not going to record a video of like, look at all this lumber I made today. But maybe they could. Maybe that's, I don't know. It's kind of a fun thing of the social media age that we live in. So fueled by that, and seeing like, oh my gosh, there's a lot of people asking about this. I whipped up a landing page the next day that started off, I just wanted it to be like a really simple, this thing is in development and put your email here and you can sign up for my newsletter. And I was able to get to that point so quickly that I was like, maybe I should have like a little explanation of what this is. And then I started thinking, well, okay, the structure I would want for that is this Pain Dream Fix structure from that I'm borrowing from Amy Hoy. She has a really nice template of a long form landing page of how to do that. And then I was like, and I'd like some illustrations of here's the type of clipping thing that I'm doing. And I could embed my original tweet to have an example of what that looks like. And by the end of it, I think 2.5 hours later, suddenly I have a half decent landing page that's not perfect, but it's a shipped thing that people are reading. And now I have 11 people on my email list of people who want to know about this. And I thought at first that it was just like my friends, because I noticed like Leanna Patch was on there, and Margaret's, I'm so sorry, Margaret, I forgot your last name. And I was like, they're just getting on this because like they're my friend and they want to see what I'm up to. And I asked Leanna, and she was like, no, Christian, you're so egotistical. I don't care about you. Like this is a thing that I actually want. And I was like, okay, that's cool. So I'm feeling really good about where that is and the work I did last week and where it's going. It feels like a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah, that's funny. So I saw your tweet about that too, and you already gave me Camhead, so I didn't put my email on the list. So it's not just it's not just friends putting it on to be on your list. They
That's
probably
funny.
actually want it. Yeah, no, like what you said is, I talked to someone else about that kind of this week too. Like the more you make the machine easier, the more stuff you can put out. Like, and also like before, took me so long to do a screencast because like I had to get everything set up and everything. Now I have a pretty good flow. Camhead would
Mm.
be the last piece of that puzzle that's easier. But like I have, like for example, I have it so dialed in that I have my second monitor at the right resolution all the time.
Yes.
So like anytime I want, I just slide a window over there and I hit record, and it already just works. Um, so you can just put out way more content if you do that kind of thing, which is awesome. And then the
Mhm.
other thing you said about lumberyards, I don't know about lumberyards, but I did watch an excavator for 20 minutes the other day on YouTube just digging. And this guy was explaining what he was doing. And it was awesome. It was like super cathartic to just see this like thing digging up mud.
Yeah.
And he had like 1 million views for his excavator digging.
Amazing.
So yeah, like in this kind of world where you can see anything you want, like if you produce the content, there will be people to watch it. So
Yes. Oh man, I love that. I have a friend who's a arborist, my cousin, and he has started doing some social media videos of his arborist work. And for him, it's just like that's just his typical day, and it's sort of boring. But by putting just a little bit more marginal effort in, of like, oh, I'm at the top of this tree, and I'll
right.
pan the camera down, and he's 200 feet up this giant pine tree, and you're like, oh my god, he's able to. I hate this term because it feels so hokey and like YouTubery, but he's able to grow his audience now. He's building trust, and now if I ever have a thought, oh, I have this tree that needs pruning, I'm going to think of him because I've seen his videos of doing that, and I trust him, and I feel like I've sort of built up a relationship with him. Uh, this meta skill of recording and sharing the things that you're doing, I think is applicable to anything. So anyone out there listening, if you're doing a thing, figure out a way to record it and tell people about it because it's really cool when you show your work. I have one point of clarification. I think I was not clear in the project that I was making the landing page for, and I have 17 different projects going on. I have not yet made a site for a landing page for Camhead, although
okay,
that is very high on my to-do list.
That was
the one that I made was for
Clips.marketing.
Clips.marketing.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
But like same thing. The logic still applies. Although now that I have this, it would be much easier to do one for Camhead.
Be pretty good.
I need to ship that first, though. I need to just like get it on the App Store. I think it's like 3 buttons I need to click. I might just do that.
Yeah. So there's another thing so we talked about like excavators and arborists and stuff. Like most, especially like plumber, like any tradesperson in a local town, most are like they're spending so much time on their business, they have no time to spend on social media or whatever. But if you just started filming like what you did or whatever, then you start getting a social media following, which may not make sense because those people aren't in your town, right? But then you can go to like the local newspaper and say, hey, I have 10,000 people. Maybe you could republish one of my, articles or whatever. So it's like, even if you don't think it could be helpful, it's almost certainly helpful to publish what you're doing and showing your work like that because it can be applied in so many different ways, even if the people watching you directly aren't the ones that are going to like buy more of your services or whatever.
Yeah, agreed. I'm reminded of my sister and brother-in-law are very interested in starting their own businesses. My sister wants to start a tutoring business, and my brother-in-law wants to start a like a mobile mechanic business. And I was talking with him about it because I've read so much about the software business, and was sort of curious about like, okay, how many of these lessons would still apply for an in-person business? And first of all, it felt so much easier to give someone else advice than to like follow it myself. Of like, okay, yes, you need to like tell everyone about this, and you need to hand out flyers in the neighborhood, and like that. I would feel so self-conscious doing that with my own thing. But it's so easy to see for someone else. Like, yes, of course, you run a mobile mechanic business. Go to every neighborhood in a 2-mile radius and print out these door hangers and like say that this is the service you offer, and you're probably going to get like 50 people contact you the next day, scheduling things. But I also laid out for them a plan of what they could do with social media, of like film some videos of tutorials of you teaching these basic calculus things, and then you could take that video and promote it in YouTube. I think regionally. I think YouTube lets you make
YouTube lets you get pretty. Yeah, you go down to the city, I think.
Yeah, perfect. So like for a tutoring business, you record some videos of you teaching calculus things, and you do that by thinking in your customer's perspective of like how would they be phrasing, trying to solve the problems that they're having that you can help them with. And it's going to be weird. It's going to be words that you're not familiar with. Of like, what is the squiggly line in front of the what does the F symbol mean when trying to take an integral or something? And if you can talk in the customer's voice and build up that trust, then it sort of becomes trivially easy to build this audience. And it was so interesting talking with them because they were echoing these same sorts of like self-conscious. I couldn't do that, and I'm not good enough to be helping people in this way. And talking to them and seeing them external to me, it's like, no, of course you are. You're helping people with problems they have. That's enough. Yes, tell everyone about it. You're not spending nearly enough time on the marketing side of it. And if I had control over how much time you were spending marketing versus actually doing the thing, I would ratchet way up the marketing side that you're doing. And I would say, like, spend 3/4 of your time recording these videos and figuring out advertisements and things. And yet for myself, that is so difficult to do because I get to the point where I'm like, okay, I'm going to buy a Facebook ad for a thing I've made, and am I really good enough to do this? And like,
it's funny how that works.
Am I not just wasting someone's time doing it? Yeah. So doing Clips.marketing for me is like, it's a way for me to practice getting more of myself out there and realizing that, like, no, yeah, I do have some interesting things to say that people are interested in. And so many people out there just like mindlessly scrolling through their phones, and most of the content out there is so boring. And if I have something that might actually improve your life that you're actually interested in, like, yes, I would love to do that as much as possible. And hey, not everyone's going to like it. It's not for everyone, and that's good. Just don't follow me. Like, that's fine. So I'm learning much more about myself and getting much more comfortable embodying these ideas that I've learned academically in marketing of like, it's okay to tell people about a thing that you're doing. And in fact, it even helps them if you're pursuing this genuinely and not just trying to put more of yourself out there to nefariously capture more people's attention. I'm warming up to that idea.
Yeah. I have all the same thoughts. Yeah. It's like when you talked about like putting a door flyer on everybody's door, it's like you'll get 50 customers, but you'll get 2 people probably yell at you, yep. Right? And you'll get 90% of the people ignore you.
Yes.
But for those 50 people, you're really going to help them, right?
Yeah.
So it's like you just have to get more comfortable with that. Like there's going to be some people who are going to hate what you're doing. You got to handle that. And then most people are going to ignore you. And that doesn't mean they hate you. It just means they have other stuff going on in their lives, right? So, but for those 50 people, that's super helpful. So,
yes. Yep. And they're going to be thankful that you put that flyer on their door. That's the thing I want to get more comfortable with. I look forward to you putting more flyers on my door virtually with more installments of this Building Assassin a week. I love it. As a representative of the market, keep it coming.
Awesome.
It's great. It's directly helping me. And Acorn Chat might even be a thing that I want to use directly. I built my own hacky version of that in Fileinbox that just goes to email. Oh, you know what? Maybe not, because I hate Slack. This may be another like non-rational problem.
Yeah, so I wanted it in Slack because I have Slack open all the time. But one of the things I was going to do for sure, but not in the first version, is make a web interface for it, so you don't have to use Slack. And also a mobile app, because I think the app stores are really I was going to say underutilized, but a lot of people utilize it. Yeah, it's difficult to overestimate how many people are going to come to your app or just by downloading it from the app store, like, oh, what's this? And so that's another marketing channel. Okay, so there's that. And then the other thing I wanted to do is eventually connect it into other things. So connect it into Teams, connect it into, who knows, GitHub, connect it into CRMs. One of the things about chat is about half of the apps out there are basically CRMs with chat attached, and about half are just the chat. So I think if I can integrate with a CRM, I don't want to build a CRM, but if I integrate with one, I think that's another way to get more customers.
Yep.
So maybe in the future, there will be an iteration of Acorn Chat that you would like to use.
Cool. I might send in some feature requests holding you hostage, like in a similar way that you've done for Camhead. Like, if you implement these features, I would use it. And also, I think it's important to recognize, like, the game here is to brutally focus on this is the type of person that I'm helping, and that person, it sounds like, is someone who has a SaaS, who has Slack open all the time, and just narrowing in on like that is the person I'm helping, I think is the best way to go forward.
Yeah.
I'm curious, what happens if you're not logged into Slack? Where?
Yeah.
What happens?
So I have several ideas, and there's lots of edge cases for the launch. There will be two options. So if you're not logged into Slack, then it will show either nothing, so like it just gets rid of it, or it shows an email list link. So, or like you click on it, you fill out your name, email, and message, and then it sends an email. Yeah.
That's what I have right now. That's the thing that I made for myself. So if it defaults to that, that would actually be perfect.
Yeah.
And,
And then the other thing that some people want for sure is to set like business hours, because some like people have Slack on their phones. And so you set business hours, and anytime during the business hours, it shows a link. It'll ping you on your phone, you know?
Yeah.
Otherwise, it'll show the mail link. I don't know if I'll get to business hours in the next 2 days, but I will definitely have, if you're not online, it'll show either nothing or an email me link.
Cool. Okay, I take that back. If you have the email backup, that would be feature parity with the thing that I have on Fileinbox right now. So I think I would use that. And then if you have the extra feature of like, you can have live chat if you happen to have Slack open. Yeah, that'd be cool. Might be able to nab a few more customers that I wouldn't be able to otherwise just by immediately responding to them.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, if you don't have live chat on any of your websites, it's really hard to know where, like, if you do add it, you know, how many more people would, you know, if they have a question and they could just chat you real quick, how many more people will you convert? And it's more than the price of the thing, almost certainly, like with almost any amount of traffic. And so, yeah.
Neat. Cool. I'm excited for next week for both you and I for the next steps. For me, I want to be able to transcribe a full video and then take that full transcription for the full video and make a tiny transcription for the smaller clip, and then have an interface for editing that, because the Google transcription API is like 98% accurate, but if you're using a proper noun, it usually messes up. So I'd like to fix that and be able to make that social video. And the step after that would be building a really basic version of Buffer, which is just like an API call on a timer. That's not difficult to be able to queue clips up on Twitter. And part of that is going to be that I'm going to need to figure out this problem of running FFmpeg commands in Google Cloud Storage. And I may take your suggestion from last week of making a little API to do that.
Yeah.
That could be like
another SaaS
separate service.
Yeah.
Another SaaS.
FFmpeg as a service.
But actually, like, that would be a great idea. And there's this node library called Fluent FFmpeg that it's a translation layer between Node and FFmpeg, and it would be really easy to go from that Node library to like, here's a web form, or here's an API standard of how you define these commands. So like, yeah, that's probably. And if I can do it in a serverless way, like the cost of making this its own thing would be pretty trivial. And it's a thing that I'm going to need to. I don't know. We'll see. That's my goal for the next week. You are 48 hours away from finishing this series of Building Assassin in a Week.
Yep.
What's the plan after that? What are the next 5 days going to be?
So there's probably a whole nother week of things I want to do after the week is done. I already know, the things I'm not going to get done that I'm going to want to. So I'll probably do those. At some point in the future, I want to do, maybe it's another week, like a week of marketing this thing. So like, here are 7 marketing things I'm trying in 7 days or something like that.
Oh, I love that.
Like this whole idea of the problem with that is that marketing, like sometimes you set it up and then wait a week and then see what the results are. So it may not work to be like a week-long thread or something, but I want to do this thing where in public, I test marketing ideas for something that I know people want already. So it's like, the thing, like things already exist. So if I market it right, then I should get customers. And if I don't, then I know my marketing is wrong, or whatever, something else. So maybe I'll do 7 days of sales first, actually, because that is probably the first step anyway. So like talking to people, where if anyone's listening and doesn't understand what I'm saying is the difference between marketing and sales. Marketing is, how do you get people to visit your site? How do you get them to convert in a kind of basically in a non-touch way? There can be some small touches there, but sales, on the other hand, is a lot of reaching out. It's a lot of responding to people. It's more one-on-one talking to people. So even though the price point of this thing, which is another thing I have to figure out, but even though the price point is not going to be high enough to like warrant direct sales, doing it at the beginning, I think, is absolutely the way to go, just to learn. Then you take all those lessons and you apply it to your marketing. So maybe I'll do 7 days of sales or something like that.
That makes sense. I would love to see that. I would love to see both the 7 days of sales of like, I don't know, each video is a snippets from a recorded call that you had with someone, and then what you learned from that. And then the 7 days of marketing would be amazing. You're right. A lot of things in marketing, it's sort of, you have to implement the thing and then you wait for weeks and see if it actually had a result. But, you know, if every video was, here's the seed that I'm planting, I went on Ahrefs and did some keyword research for things people are looking for. And then based on those, I wrote these articles. You could have a follow-up series to that of like, okay, here's each of the experiments I did and how they went. Oh, man, I love it. I love this working in public. Acorn Chat is such a fun experiment. I'm excited to see what the next steps are. Chris, that's all I got.
That's all I got too.
Then I will see you next week.
All right.
Bye.